Right, so the webinar has started, and we're just letting the participants roll in. Hello, Pauline. Hope the top of the South Island is treating you well. Hello, Frank. Hello, Chris. Yep. Hope everyone's having a great day. And thank you for the ones that have joined so far. This webinar is going to be on keys to a great tenant experience, which is pretty important because I like to think of tenants as our customers at the end of the day. I don't think very many of us reference or make reference to tenants as customers, but at the end of the day, if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have our businesses. I might just give another couple of seconds for others to join. And then we'll get underway. Got a lot of exciting stuff to cover. Thanks to our three panellists. Right, so it looks like most people that are going to come have probably, some more coming in. Hello, Jonathan. We've got a good number of attendees, probably not as many people that attended the Queen's funeral, but that's pretty hard to compete with. Righto, let's get underway. So yeah, once again, welcome everyone. Welcome to this RPMA webinar. This topic is keys to a great tenant experience, which is very important. As I said earlier, they are basically the customers of our business. So we need to make sure we're fostering good relationships with those tenants and making them have a great experience. Because when you do give people a great experience, they'll tell other people. Property managers don't always have a fantastic reputation, broadly speaking. So if we can do a better job by tenants, that's going to lift the standards of the industry, which is what RPMA is all about. So the great news for you attendees, we have three very awesome, fantastic and experienced and award-winning property managers for you today. So what these guys are going to do is they'll talk for about 10 minutes each, potentially, and they're going to be sharing tips, tips that have led them to being able to consistently deliver a great tenant experience. Throughout this process, if you have any questions, just drop them in the question box for me, and I will read those out and we'll get our panelists to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So don't hold back, feel free to send the questions on in whenever you like. So just a few introductions of our panelists. We have Vicky from Pukeko. Vicky's got a long history in property management, around 13 years. She won Pukeko Rental Property Manager of the Year. It's probably easier to tell me the years that she didn't win the award than the years that she did. Suffice to say, she's won that multiple times. She puts customer service really highly on her priority list, and that's why she's amassed dozens and dozens of 5-star Google reviews. She's also a member of the RPMA. And today, Vicky's going to be touching on a piece of technology that I don't think many of us will know about. It's quite niche. I won't spoil it. But Vicky stands by this piece of technology that she uses that leads to a great tenant experience. But I'll let Vicky talk more about that shortly. That's very cool. I saw it the other day. Then we've got Richard Horne. Richard is based in Wellington, and he is the owner of ManageMyProperty. You might have already seen him on your TV screens because he did 3 seasons with the Renters program. Richard, like Vicky, also has a ton of experience. He's been in the industry for 20 years. He's got a nickname for himself, which is the Fearless Leader. Again, like Vicky, Richard is a committee member of the RPMA. He speaks a bit funny, and that's because he's Scottish. And the thing that I love about Richard is passionate about tenant contact. In fact, he enjoys the tenant contact, and he says that if you set up some great tenant contact, that makes things a lot easier. So it was an easy decision for us to ask Richard to come on and be a panelist and share some of his experience when it comes down to making a great tenant experience. Then third and final, we've got Rachel. Rachel is the panelist coming from Christchurch. She is the owner of Propertyscouts Christchurch. She's been working in property management for a number of years and brings a wealth of skills to the industry. I've worked alongside Rachel, and she's a wonderful woman, and she puts customer service pretty much at the top of her list. And this led Rachel to taking out and currently holding the Customer Service Award at Propertyscouts. So really looking forward to what Rachel has to say. She's going to be talking about sort of responsiveness to tenants, building relationships, doing one-on-one viewings, and really good communication, which tenants love. So that's a little bit about our panellists. What I'll do now is, without further ado, I will pass over to Vicky. Vicky, if you're ready, I'll be handing over to you for you to kick off your 10-minute or so presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'll start today in my presentation. I just want to talk a little bit about the tenant's first experience, because that's kind of what it's like for, that's what it's about for tenants, is how are they going to react to your company if you don't give them a good experience. And one of the ways that at Pukeko Rental Managers we like to give our tenants a great experience is through the viewing process. So right up front, before anything else, basically, is making sure that they have a great viewing experience. And what we have discovered is the great way, or the wonderful way, and the technology that I'm using at the moment is a 360-degree spinner. And I'll show you what that is. I'll just hold it up. And what I use this for is taking photos of the property prior, so that I can advertise the property and give the tenant an amazing experience, because they can walk through the property before they even get to look at it in person. So if I just hold this up, this is my, hang on, where I've got to get it in line there. So this is my iPhone, and you'll see on the back of it, I have a special cover, and I have up the top here, a lens, and that's the lens that is used to take the photo. Just pop that down. And then this is the spinner. And this little gizmo turns like that on a tripod. And the idea is, prior to advertising, I go into the house, so that there may well be still a tenant in there. I go in and I take a photograph of each room, 360 degrees, so it's a full circle. I set the tripod up with the spinner and the iPhone with this lens on it. And then I take a photo of the entire room. And then I move to the next room and do the same thing. This process for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home takes me about 25-30 minutes to do. And then I come home and I join all the pictures together on my screen. You can do it on your phone, but I prefer to look at the pictures and choose which is the first view that I want to have for each room. And then I join all those together, and I put little labels on, which I'm going to get Ryan to show you in a moment with a video. And we can walk from room to room to room to room. And that forms my first viewing. And as you know, often tenants don't want 50 people traipsing through their house. I don't know how many applications you're getting these days, but in the Hawke's Bay, we regularly get 30 or 50 people applying for the property. And not every one of them is going to, first of all, qualify or be appropriate for the house. So what we do up front is give them a viewing. And that viewing is a walkthrough of the property. Now, we did find out some information. We had the chairman of the RPMA has found out some information for us. And I'll just read this out, because this will kind of put the viewing in perspective for you. The tenant does not have to provide any personal information until they have viewed the property. they can submit an application after they have viewed. And David found out that the reasoning behind this is because some property management companies were requesting applications before the prospective tenant could even view. However, the tenant can voluntarily supply information or an application, as most are starting to do so, and that increases their chances of getting the property. So what we can do is we can ask basic questions before organising the viewing, things like number of occupants, do they have pets, when can they move in, are they smokers? Now, the only hesitation about this coming from the privacy compliance officer regarding our virtual tours was the recording of personal photos. And what we do is give the tenant, the incumbent tenant, the opportunity to remove any photographs that are hanging on the wall. So I always say to them, if you've got any personal pictures, please take them down. And that's up to them. If I arrive and there's still pictures on the wall, well, obviously they're happy to have the pictures on the wall. And I still go ahead and take my 360-degree photos. I'm thinking, Ryan, might be the good time to start showing people what this looks like.
Has that come up on the screen?
Yes, it has, Ryan. Yep.
Right. So you tell me what to do.
Yeah, so if you just scroll around and if you maybe going through the kitchen.
Oh. Well, it certainly is 365 degrees, isn't it?
It sure is.
And I've got the home presented well for you.
Yes. Fabulous tenants.
Can you even look at the floor? Yep.
Yep, scroll it around. You'll see, if you scroll it right to the bottom, Ryan,
yep,
you'll see the Pukeko logo there.
Brilliant. Yeah,
and that's where the tripod is standing. And so what the software program does, or the app, is it just drops the logo in wherever the tripod is.
Oh, right, so you can get another angle here.
Yep. And then you can go to the backyard out the sliding doors.
Brilliant.
And again, that spins, the spinner has taken the entire journey around everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, click on the hallway, and then there's quite a few links on my hallway. Master bedroom, your bathroom. So as you can see, you can walk room by room, get a literally full 360-degree view of every room. You can move the picture up and down, see what the floor's like, see what the ceiling's like.
Helps you understand the layout and configuration of a property that you wouldn't necessarily get from still photos as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely,
Ryan. And that seems to have been the godsend of using this very, very cool piece of software. And I'm finding, tenants are loving it because they can see, they can literally walk through the house, apply, and then I take them to a personal viewing if they meet our criteria.
And there's no travel time either, obviously. It's quite
No, they're saving money on travelling. I'm saving money on travelling and viewings. I typically only have to do 1 or 2 personal viewings because my process here, everyone has got to see the house. The other great thing for the incumbent tenant is they haven't got people walking through with sticky fingers likely to pick anything up en route, which is always a worry for tenants.
Vicky, we had an attendee that had to pull out just before joining the webinar, but they said they were quite excited to see this, and they did ask me a question to ask you. So the question that was put forward was, how much does this cost?
The setup cost, Ryan, is $550, and that includes the tripod, the cover for the backing for my iPhone, the lens and the spinner. And then each month, depending on how many listings you have, you pay basically a block. You can pay a block fee for the number of listings. So I typically only have 3 maximum listed on TradeMe at any given time, which works out really cheap for me. It's $15 a month for 3. But if you had a big office and you were only, you had one piece of equipment in the office, you might be paying $25 a month.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Thank you for that, Vicky.
Okay, that's me done.
Wonderful. Yeah, I really like that. I like sort of leveraging technology to save not only tenants' time and effort, but also us, the property manager, because there's nothing worse than driving out to a property for a private appointment and the tenant going, don't like the layout of the house, or something along those lines. And it's sort of been a waste of time for both of you. So if this technology does help cut down on that, I think it's brilliant. So thank you very much for sending that or providing that today, Vicky.
It's okay. Oh, and Ryan, I will mention too that if you're using Palace, there's the opportunity you load it up in Palace, and then it loads directly into TradeMe.
I see. Yep.
So if you've got a live listing, it just says 3D tour. And I direct people to my 3D tour. I have a front photograph of the house, and I don't have any other photographs of the home. So they are forced to the 3D.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thanks for adding that.
No problem.
Right. Would now like to ask Richard, the owner of managemyproperty, based in Windy Wellington, if you could take the floor and tell us your secrets to creating a great tenant experience. Over to you, Richard.
Always traditional to have a stab at Wellington's weather. Yes. Yes. So, yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in. So, keys to a great tenant experience. I've kind of like Vicky. I've kind of rewound right back to the very beginning of when you first meet prospective tenants. So, I'm really talking about when people are looking for a rental and how they find the rentals that you've got that you're advertising as available. And that means that it's very important that your website, your company website, is effective, is working for you, and also that it's compatible with mobile devices, because tenants are generally, most people are generally operating off their devices rather than off a laptop. So you want to make sure that your website is also mobile friendly. And in your website, that you're informing people, you're telling them how you work, how they can apply, how they can go to a viewing, and you provide answers for them. I guess what I'm saying is you're developing the Big Dummy's Guide to Renting. You want to, well, my aim has always been to provide answers before anybody asks them. And that speaks to the content in your advert on TradeMe. Who doesn't advertise on TradeMe? You have answers to the general questions. Sadly, it still doesn't mean that people won't ask you dumb questions. Usually, how much does this cost, or how many bedrooms has it got? It's like, it's all in the advert. So you want to make sure that you're answering their questions before they ask them. And that plugs into using video, which Vicky's talked about already. Video and audio walkthroughs, they're really useful. Allows people to get an impression of a property before they actually get in the car and turn up to have a look. And also information podcasts. I'd call them podcasts, maybe YouTube videos you could do and post on your website or on your social media, just explaining, for example, what are your rules around pets, or what are your rules for applying? How do you apply for a property? And you're informing people before they actually have to talk to you. Saves you a lot of time. Conversely, you want to pick up the phone and talk to people. Try not to get into an email and text conversation because it's time consuming and can be ambiguous. So actually talking to people, we ring people back and they're usually quite stunned that we took the time to just call them rather than sending any kind of automated reply. When somebody becomes a tenant and you start to build an ongoing relationship with them, because you're going to be doing your inspections regularly and checking the rents every week. When you go out to do a viewing or an inspection, whether the place is occupied or not, one of my practices is I'll pull a few weeds. You know, there might be some weeds around about the front door or on the steps down from the road to the property, or an overhanging part of a tree or a bush that, you know, I'll just snap it off. I carry a little bottle of CRC in the car for squeaky hinges and sticky locks. And these are little details that sometimes tenants don't notice when you've been there, that you've pulled a couple of weeds. But I think it's a good thing. Wipe a window every now and then. At the end of inspections, again, you've been in somebody's home when you're doing an inspection. I'm very conscious of that you've got the key to walk in the front door to somebody's life, and all their stuff is there. So you've got to treat it with respect. And at the end of an inspection, it's quite nice to leave just a little handwritten note saying, hey, place looks great. Thanks for looking after it so well. You could maybe leave a little Whittaker's chocolate, or, you know, a couple of minties or something, just to say thank you. And I think tenants appreciate that. Can't say I've had them ringing up raving about our minties, but, you know. I think generally speaking, if you want to give a prospective or an existing tenant a good experience, just treat them fairly, treat them reasonably. Don't be condescending to them, and don't be bossy. They are supposed to be adults, and some of them can be challenging adults, but treat them fairly. And my experience has been they treat me fairly back. And I think the personal contact element of it is the thing that I enjoy. Sometimes when I'm going out to do viewings, I'm not looking forward to it on a Saturday morning, especially when it's sunny and the golf clubs are calling. But once I get into it and I start doing viewings, I really enjoy meeting the people that come along. So again, looking at the longer term thing, you sort your maintenance jobs and repair jobs quickly when you've done inspections. Your tenants will love you for it. They're always very impressed when we get a little thing fixed, and they're so thankful. We get good reviews from that too. But in light of that, finally, remember that you're not the concierge. You're not your tenant's slave repairman. You're there to make sure that everything's working, but if there's a light bulb out, they should be able to change it themselves. So yeah, that's my contribution to the conversation this morning.
Oh, thank you very much. That's wonderful. And just to summarise some of the points that really hit home for me that you said, Richard, was you're right about tenants loving phone calls from us, because a lot of the time when I ring a prospective tenant, they're just so surprised that a property manager has actually rung them up to discuss their requirements and their needs, and making a time for them to come over and see the property. And they say thank you at the end of the conversation, and they genuinely mean it, and they're stunned. So now if you take that prospective tenant and they end up being your tenant, you're already on a fantastic footing for them to have a great experience, because right from the very communication, when you gave them that phone call, they thought you were pretty great. So that resonated with me a lot. Also, being respectful to tenants' property. Like, you're right, sometimes we forget that we are going in, opening the door to someone's life, and actually acknowledging that and saying, hey, thanks for having me over today, or thanks for making the access so easy. I really appreciate it. And here's a little chocolate. I think that means a lot to them. Once again, they weren't expecting it. So it does mean a lot to them.
Yeah.
I also like what you said about handling maintenance so quickly. That's, again, I don't think tenants expect that, unfortunately. But it should be the case that we do handle maintenance quickly. So when we get on to maintenance, one of my favourite things to do is if they've texted me and they said that their faucet's leaking or something like that, when I load the work order, like we use Tapi, I always like to tick that box that means that Tapi will send the tenant on my behalf a notification that, hey, we've got your work order and it's been sent to our contractor. And that's just comes back to communication as well. And they know the job's underway. So yeah, speaking of maintenance, have you ever noticed when you put a tenant into a property, Richard, it's frequently the case that you get a bunch of maintenance sort of straight away?
Yes, yeah, that does happen.
So that can be, for some property managers, it can be like, oh no, I've just put these people into the property. They've sent me a list of 6 things they want fixed. They've just got in there. Now, what I find is you can take that approach, but it's not the best one. The best approach is to hit that full on and hit that maintenance, so long as it's valid, right out of the park. Now, what that'll do is they will think you are the bee's knees. So I'd encourage you, if you are on the receiving end of a long list of things for someone who's just moved into a property, smash it out of the park and they'll just think you're great. So thank you, Richard. As I say, a lot of that resonated with me and I appreciate you sharing the thoughts with us. On to our third and final speaker, we've got Rachel, the owner of Propertyscouts Christchurch. As I mentioned before, Rachel's won an award for customer service, so she will know a lot about delivering a great tenant experience. So without further ado, Rachel, I'd love to pass over to you.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks to everyone for joining today. I guess obviously we're here talking about keys to a good tenant experience. In my own opinion and my beliefs are that it all does come down to good customer service, and that will flow all the way through from the very initial stages of meeting that tenant right to the exiting inspections as well. Richard has actually sort of spoke a few areas that I was going to talk about today, so we'll sort of just gloss over those ones. But basically it does start from your marketing, your good customer service. So you want to make sure that your property is really good quality photos and really good description of that property, so the tenant sort of gets a bit more information before they're sending in their inquiries. When we are receiving those inquiries, you really want to be responsive to those inquiries. So don't let them sit in your inbox for a while. We want to be, actioning those really promptly and getting that tenant into a viewing. So moving on into the viewings. So when we do our viewings here at Propertyscouts in Christchurch, we only offer private viewings. And we've received really positive feedback from that, from tenants that are going through. We're finding that the majority of properties in Christchurch only do bulk viewings, and the tenants are finding it's a really horrible experience. They do prefer the private viewings, and that gives them the opportunity to actually walk through the property one-on-one. They're able to have a really good look around, ask me some questions. I can give them all the information they need, and they go away feeling that that property would suit them or not. Obviously, at the viewings, you want to be friendly but professional. Okay, the amount of times I've heard going, oh my goodness, I've walked up and I don't even get acknowledgement from a property manager. She's sitting in the corner on their phone, or he's sitting in the corner. So really be friendly and starting that relationship there. So once we have secured a tenant, obviously we're moving into the entry inspection stage. We want to start building that relationship right there at that entry inspection. So it's really important not to rush this opportunity and to spend that time with the tenant. So, we're going through the entry inspection with them, making sure that they're happy with that property before we walk out that door. We spend time, we explain to them how the appliances work, and that's going to save us time in the long run. We're not going to get that phone call at 7 o'clock at night and say, hey, my oven's not working, and it's probably because they haven't set a clock or something simple like that. So we do spend that time with them. We also make sure that all our properties have a manual of appliance instructions as well, and we leave that in the kitchen drawer, so they've got access to all of that as well. Once again, they're not bothering us, or if we don't have the manuals, we'll just get on and Google them and find them, so that the tenant's got the link or the actual booklet there. Pardon me, sorry. So when we do our entry inspection, we do actually leave a little gift for our tenants, and it's like a little notebook and a keyring and also a pen, which has fallen off the desk somewhere, and a pen. We also leave them this tenant information booklet that is just got lots and lots of useful information. In there, it talks about how to pay rent. It goes right through to reporting maintenance as well. And so we go through our website through a portal, which is really simple for tenants just to jump on our website through the portal and start reporting their maintenance as well. I find it really, really easy, really user-friendly. Obviously, when Richard sort of said this as well, and so did Ryan, in terms of their maintenance, you really want to be, you know, on the ball with that, getting it finished in a timely manner. Tenants don't like waiting around for long periods of time for maintenance to be done. We know ourselves, if we've got maintenance in our own home, we want it done. We don't want to be sitting there waiting for it to be done. And that's the same for a tenant. So be proactive with your regular maintenance inspections as well. You know, get those organised and get that maintenance sorted in a timely manner. When we do our routine inspections, we do leave a little treat as well for our tenants, which is normally a little bag of jelly beans. And it's quite funny, if the kiddies are home, they'll come up and ask if their room's clean enough and get all excited, hoping that they're going to get a little bag of jelly beans at the end of it all. So that's really good. And that's just all part of building that relationship with the tenant as well, right back from that, you know, entry inspection, and making them feel like nothing's an issue, that you're approachable and that you can be contacted at any given time when they do have issues that come up. So it's also being consistent with your communication. So once again, as Ryan said, once that maintenance report comes through, making sure that we update our tenant, letting them know what's happening. And just certain things, like in Christchurch recently, we've had an excess water charge that's come through from the council. So, you know, making sure the tenants are aware of that this is new to what wasn't originally in their tenancy agreement, that we are now charging for excess water charges. So making sure you're consistent with that communication and any changes that happen, whether it's council regulations or even, you know, things that are appropriate to that tenancy. The most important thing, I think, you know, it is the tenant's home, and we do have to respect their privacy as well. That's really important. One other thing that we do at Propertyscouts Christchurch is we do tenant surveys, and this just ensures that our processes are still really working really well, and also shows us if we have dropped the ball somewhere along the line, and that we can sort of change that once again, and make sure the tenant is having that really good experience with us. The other thing that we do, we encourage our tenants to do Google reviews, which we feel is really important as well. This obviously can potentially lead to new business for us. You know, we know that everyone shops around and looks at Google reviews, so that could potentially be an owner wanting to come through, and if we can see that our tenants are giving us great reviews, that's a plus in our eyes. So that's basically all I have really to say. As I said, it just really comes down to good customer service and continuing that all the way through, being consistent in what you're doing.
Wonderful.
And that's it.
Thank you very much for that, Rachel. Really appreciate it. It's been a bit of a common theme about building relationships with tenants, and I think that is at the centre of making them have a great tenant experience. If you're on good terms with them, nothing's going to be a problem. I used to work with a joker who used to talk about having, he would look for any opportunities to build goodwill with tenants, so an opportunity for us to do something for them. And he was doing that on a genuine basis, but it did have another outcome. Whenever we needed something, like we really wanted to show someone through the property and we had goodwill with that tenant and we didn't have much time, those tenants, because of the goodwill that he had built up, he could basically spend that goodwill with them to get the desired outcome, the thing that he needed. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, Rachel, it was really fantastic. It sounds to me as well like you're really big on educating the tenants, and I think that makes for a great tenant experience, but there's also a great outcome for you. It's going to lessen problems down the track, particularly around how to use appliances and stuff like that. One of the things that I like to do during an entry inspection to help tenants out is I actually don't take the view that they know everything we know. So I don't take the view that they know how to remove the fins from the heat pumps and how often they should do that. So I actually take them out, show them with the sinkers, and that you need to give them a good rinse, and then you need to put them away to dry for 24 hours. Then we can go and put them back up in the heat pump. So I like to show those things and assume that the tenants don't know those things. The other thing I like to do is get the extractor fan filters as well and take them out, or actually have the tenant take them out, because then they learn it, and show them that this is where the grease can build up. And every 3 months or so, it's really convenient for you. You can just put them in the dishwasher and it will clean those up. The other thing I like to go through is how to manage moisture and things like that, because if you let the property in summer, it looks great, but how do we know that they're going to have the skills to properly ventilate their home when the colder winter months come along? I'm just going to finish with one extra tip of mine. It requires me to share my screen and play a video, so we'll see how this goes. But it's something I like to do with pretty much every tenancy about a week after it's begun. So hopefully you can see me on the screen in the bright sun. And what this video is going to show is every tenancy I set up, I diarise for 1 week after the tenant's been in the property. And I, instead of calling them, instead of emailing them, instead of texting them, or instead of doing nothing at all, which is what usually happens, I send them a video message and I just say, "G'day, Steve or John or whatever. How's it going in the property? I just want to check in on you. Is there anything you need? Is everything okay?" And the tenants absolutely love it. They sometimes come back and go, "Everything's perfect, thanks for checking in." Sometimes they come back and go, "Oh, actually there is something that I would like fixed." And then it gives me an opportunity to tell them how to lodge online maintenance issues. So it gets that system sorted out as well. So it's kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. So I'll play an example of a 1 week follow-up. Hopefully you can see it and hear it.
G'day Simon, it's Ryan here from Propertyscouts. Look, it's been a week since you moved into that property that we gave you. And look, I just wanted to make sure, is everything okay? Are you enjoying yourself? Do you have any questions? Yeah, so just checking in, wanting to make sure everything's okay. Look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.
So that's it there. The other thing is, if they say everything's going great, that dovetails into another sort of video message. "G'day, Steve. I'm so stoked that you're happy with the property," or, you know, the answer to your question is this. And hey, would you mind taking a moment to leave me a Google review, just so other tenants like you know what to expect when they deal with me and my company? So it can be 2 birds, 1 stone once again. So that was just my little extra tip on top of all the amazing tips that the panelists have already given us. So that's the end of the panelists and myself speaking. I just want to see from the attendees, are there any questions out there? If there are, please put them forward. Would love to see some questions. It's the little Q&A button in the bottom of your screen. There was one asked earlier by Dee, "What is the camera spinner called?" And that was answered actually by David. But it's called virtualtourcreator.com.au. While people start to gather your questions, I actually have a question, and it's a question for you, Richard, if that's all right. Richard, I would like to know, what's your best advice for a newbie PM?
Oh, best advice for a newbie PM. Probably don't sweat the small stuff, because it does tend to actually all be small stuff. It's been my experience watching various members of my team go through, I guess, an understanding barrier that there are, you know, nobody's going to die. Hopefully, nobody's going to die. It's all tends to be small stuff. So just keep working your way through the small stuff and get that experience under your belt, but don't sweat it. It's not worth getting stressed about.
Good advice. Not to pick on you, I will ask you a follow-up question if that's all right. Conversely, what would be the best advice that you would give a tenant? So say you're doing the tenancy induction, where you're really trying to set up the relationship and explain how the tenancy is going to operate, the do's and don'ts of being a manage my property tenant. What's your best advice to a tenant?
Actually, when I first meet people at viewings, and also if I'm doing an opening inspection and the incoming tenant is there, I quite often refer to the 3 golden rules, and I try and do it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm being bossy, obviously, which is difficult when you have a Scottish accent. But I say to them, the 3 golden rules are: pay the rent, don't damage the property, don't annoy the neighbours. If you can do that, we're going to have a great time. You're going to enjoy living here, and everything will be sweet. But if you don't do those things, you don't want me at your doorstep at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night.
Very good. Okay, we'll just see if there's any other questions there. I also had a note to myself to maybe mention on this. Just try and look for any opportunities to sort of under-promise and over-deliver. And to do things that will take tenants by surprise. I don't mean jumping out of a cupboard to give them a fright, but I mean things like if you walk it, I carry a toolbox with me and I just have some replacement light bulbs and stuff. If one light bulb in a tenant's property is out, I'll just jump up on my stepladder and change that light bulb. I'm not suggesting we all do that, but I just know that tenants love it when you address those little things for them. They might be really busy in their life, and if you've got a light bulb nearby and you put it in, they'll be like, gee, that property manager's really nice, he changed my light bulb. It's just the little things. And the other thing that I'd like to add is a real big one around communication. For me, if I say that I'm going to get back to someone by a certain time, so let's say I say to Steve, I'm going to get back to you by 5 o'clock today, and then my day turns to shit, like it can do being a property manager. You can have a pipe burst or a block drain or something. So your day goes to shit and you know you're not going to get that chance to call that tenant at 5 o'clock. It's really important to me that I send that tenant a quick text or an email and go, hey, John or Steve, I know I said I'd get back to you by 5 o'clock tonight, but I can't do that anymore. Something's come up, but I will get back to you by 12 o'clock tomorrow. And I just think that takes a bit of the pressure off, and tenants really appreciate that sort of communication. So that was my last little thing to add. Everyone, this could be the end of the webinar because we don't have any further questions. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing from our panellists. I certainly did. And I hope the attendees are better equipped now to go and deliver great experiences to your tenants. So that's the closing, really. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for being a member of the RPMA, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Enjoy the rest of your week. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.